want a podcast? I got a SModcast. You want a podcast? I got a SModcast. You want a podcast? I got a SModcast. You wanna. Do you want a podcast? Do you want a show? Do you get your laughs from computer radio with this bro, Scotty Mo? It's about time to lose your shit. Everybody spark a spliff for that legend Kevin Smith.
Here we go, kids. Welcome to SModcast. I'm Kevin Smith. So weird to do it down the barrel of the camera because I never really shoot this, but we're in rare breathing space today, ladies and gentlemen. A world where podcast giants can get together in one room, not via Zoom like the rest of the world, doing it on fucking computers and shit. Like real human beings, we've gathered in the real world. One of us real scared because one of us had real COVID 6 weeks ago and shit. But I'm getting to sit down in New Jersey in the cradle of civilization, Red Bank, with the gentleman of Tell 'em Steve Dave, ladies and gentlemen. So, of course, the crossover between the two audiences is massive. But for those who came in late and are like, who are these cats now? Let me introduce you to the gentleman of Tell 'em Steve Dave. To my left, Walter Flanagan, ladies and gentlemen. Say hi, Walt.
Hello.
To my right, Bryan Johnson, ladies and gentlemen. Say hi, Brian.
Hello.
Master mimic Bryan Johnson, modern day Rich Little Bryan Johnson. And over next to him, of course, is the firefighter in the group, the only true hero. Give it up for Mr. Brian Quinn.
Thank you. Hello. Hello,
boys,
everyone. Hello.
What episode is Tesdy up to now?
I think it's 479 will be the next one going out.
It's fucking insane. You're nearing the 500th show.
Yes, it would have been a huge live show, but, you know,
COVID.
we don't keep it that real. Yeah.
But that's different from the huge live show that you were going to do for the 10th anniversary.
Well, it was the 10th, and then it became the 11th, and then we had to cancel it. We just had to shit can it because...
But if there hadn't been a COVID, not only would you have had the 10th anniversary show, but you would also probably be doing a live 500th episode show. Or am I wrong?
Well, I think that would have been the 500th episode. We were trying to time it so that it would have been the 500th. Not last year, but when we were going to do the 11th, we're like, we might be able to get it in there.
Right.
But now it's a non-issue.
So somberly put.
I know.
But now
I was really looking forward to
the show like
more
our
than I
hopes
knew.
died. Yeah, really. It's so fucking broken. Everything going good for this guy.
Yeah.
Married and love and shit. And he's like, but there's that thing that didn't happen.
Great about being alive anyway.
Let's talk about Tesdy, where it started versus where it is right now. You guys have been doing it for over 10 years. You passed the 10-year anniversary. You're coming up on episode fucking 500. We're in Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash, the new version of the Secret Stash, which is a 65 versus 35. I always conflate the numbers. The legendary stash from Comic Book Men was at 35 Broad Street. We are just down the block. And in this space, the Tesdy cats have what I kept calling a Tesdy theater while they were building it, but it really doesn't make sense because people are like, "What? We can go watch the show?" And it's like, well, I guess that's what a theater connotes or denotes, and I was wrong. I shifted to calling it the Tesdy Museum because of the collection of shit, but it is in fact the Tesdy Town General Store or Tesdy General Store.
TSD Town General Store.
A store within a store, kids, here at Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash, and also now a production facility. Like for those listening, you can't see it. For those watching, you might be able to. There's a green screen to my left. This is a concept that blows my fucking mind. Not green screen, that I understand. It's part of my world and shit. But that you two dudes particularly, I can't even lump Quinn into this, but you two dudes, because Quinn, going back to like first meeting Quinn was a creature of hope. That's what they'll write on his gravestone. Quinn, a creature of hope. He was a guy who was like, hey, the world, it lies in front of me. You two are the oldest fucking young men I've ever known in my life, who by the time we started hanging out, were both like, it's all over. what was the point? And fucking like really summed up life to what it was. And there was never any hint of maybe we'll make a thing. You know what I'm saying? Green screen means only one thing. Maybe we'll make a thing. And the reason that, and this ain't even maybe anymore, because I doubt that you guys would have let a wall go green if you were like, we might get to green screen. It became something that was needed because of how much production you actually do.
Yeah, we have done quite a bit of green screen production in the last 3 years.
When did that start and why? I mean, I'm not questioning like, why would you do that? But how? I guess really it's more how, who in the three of you, who first said, let's shoot something in front of green screen?
Probably you, right?
Yeah.
Are you shitting me?
Yeah, because I wanted to do a Halloween episode, and I wanted to have get him in a green suit, and we were going to paint his face orange and put a pumpkin, make him look like a pumpkin, like a floating pumpkin. Right. And I was like, how can we do that? And I was talking to Tom Mum from Comic Book Man, and he goes, well, the easiest way to do it is to get a green screen. And when he said green screen, I'm thinking like, oh man, it's going to be like tens of thousands of dollars. He goes, no, you can buy one for like $50.
And you were like,
yeah. So I was like, but then I just had to find someone that could, then film it and then take out, and do all the editing part of it to make it look like he's actually floating there. And I just put out the plea or to the listener base. I was like, hey man, does anybody know anything about green screen? And a cat named Brian Rupert from Staten Island.
Yeah.
Great guy. He was like, I can do it.
Said with the tone of a New Jerseyan from Staten Island, meaning they're not all a waste. You, Quinn, and this boy.
They like to throw me. They throw me bones when they can.
Every once in a while, there's a real kind of like Staten Island.
Nice guy. Halloran lived there for a while too, so we had him. Yeah,
but he got out of there quick.
He got out.
He's sensible.
He couldn't survive.
And when I saw how badass that Halloween episode looked on, and they put smoke behind us, they put backgrounds of like a haunted forest. That was it. I was like, I knew that like there's
we're no longer a podcast, we're a television show. Now, this part of the story, for anyone who's been like, let's say they joined TESD 5 years in, I think if they're there from day one, they might kind of glean what I'm talking about here. But let's say you joined from like, even say 3 years ago, or somebody jumped in and stuff. Even if they went back and listened to the old catalog, I don't think most people would bat an eyelash at you guys making stuff and being in production and shit like that. But knowing you, as I thought I did, or at least as I did back in the day, it's one of the most, like, that's the part of this, all of this story that captures my imagination, makes me happiest. That you, like, the podcast is, it doesn't exist without you guys being makers. Everybody making shit. But the podcast is like not heavy lifting, because it just requires us to sit around and say some shit on a mic.
Right. An audio podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once you get into the world of like, that becomes what they call like the vision. Like when people are like, what's your vision and shit? And I'm like, I got none. Here's the script. Follow that. That becomes visionary. Like it takes somebody to be like, I don't know, fucking floating head. Should be easy. Let's find somebody to do it. And then suddenly open that door and be like, oh, I could do this more and more.
Oh yeah. And we were lucky enough to find really talented people to help us along the way, like Chuck and Victor.
I think that what he's talking about though is, because I've seen what you're talking about play out like a car wreck in slow motion, but in reverse.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd be very curious to hear your take on it.
The Patreon was really where there was always this insane, like surprising creativity coming out of Walt that was like, wow, like this is fun. And then when the Patreon started, then it was like, I would get texts at like midnight. Well, about like a pumpkin head, or
about 2 pumpkin heads.
Yeah, and like this creativity and this passion just started coming out of Walt that it's almost hard to keep up with, and like started making me feel bad about my meager contributions.
Right. You're like, I used to be 1/3 of this, and now I show up and I'm given a script.
And you don't know, like you show up now, it's like, and because nothing is done like a real production, he'll be like, yeah, just show up and bring like a Joker wig. And I'll be like, all right. And I'll come in and they'll be like,
fuck you. That's how we do it in Hollywood.
It's all,
I call him Affleck. I'm like, show up, bring a Joker wig. We'll figure it out.
right. So he's on it. And like, I'll walk in and I'll just be, for some reason, every time I walk into the stash, it's still going to be the three of us and get him and maybe Chuck. Like now there's lights and there's cameras and there's everything. And I'm like, oh, we're really working here. This is fun. It's crazy to see.
It's closer. It's now looking more like your day job.
Yeah,
than it used to.
Right. Yeah. That's one of the things like where like the Patreon stuff definitely we try to be a little bit more like in that vein. But I think that like I always lean on that, like you're coming from that every day, doing that IJ stuff and doing it with all the cameras and everything. So that's why I think that I think TSD should try to be what, you know, for what you guys, what it originally was, which is this very therapeutic, not acting and not like, you know, going off like, you know, let's dress up in costumes and look like dorks or whatever.
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
you want to show up at like something happens when we show up and I'm like, oh, I really want to perform for you. It's almost like he's Sam Raimi. I'm like, all right, well, what are we doing? All right. Like, I don't want to be the weak link here. It's like, it's great. And they like guys like Chuck, they come in and they're so professional. You're like, oh, wow, you can't dial it in because it'll break his heart.
When did Chuck come into it?
Chuck came into it. We did a live show at the Gramercy in New York. I don't know, a couple years ago, 2009 and 2006. Oh, 2009.
7 years,
a lifetime ago.
And Dexter.
Oh yeah,
Dexter contacted Chuck,
Okay.
and then Chuck filmed the live show, and then the footage was basically lost for over a year, and then Chuck contacted me, and I almost threw the email away because it was such a long fucking email.
This fucking guy.
Like it was,
I don't have time for this.
Yeah, because there's this long email about this practical joke he wanted to pull, and he wanted to send it to. I don't even remember it because I was just
stain on his face.
I know. As he retells the tale, he's like the disgust. Like this man who changed our lives had a dumb idea, and I hated it.
It was almost. I was almost hitting delete, and then he said, "I'm the guy that filmed the Gramercy, and I have that footage. What do you want to do with it?"
Oh, useful.
Hello, new best friend.
If he hadn't put that in there at the bottom, yeah, I would have just glossed over that email and never even.
The lesson here, kids, is like lead with the pertinent information right in the first paragraph. Why I'm important to you. And then I'm going to get to you because you have borne witness to more than all of us. So your take is going to be very crucial. But is the increase in like let's make stuff directly related to the Patreon vis-a-vis we have an audience with expectation, or oh, we can just do literally anything we want now. I have to fill time. I have to put asses in seats. So we need to make things. Or so is it fed by responsibility, or is it fed by, oh, this would be fucking fun. I just want to do this.
Both.
Then you and I are one. This is like the proudest day of my life. Because that's it. That's the fucking key. That's the secret. You've got a fucking way to make a living where you actually would have done it anyway if you could have done it inexpensively and without putting anybody out. The only reason you feel okay about putting people out or whatever is because now it's also a job. There's money involved. But if there was no money involved, you would still be like,
it would definitely still be audio.
Audio
because
only?
I feel like the injection of a budget
yes,
allowed me to be like, all right, I'm gonna dress up everybody, I guess the cast of Batman 66, and then we're gonna get into Star Wars costumes, and then we're gonna do this because I had money to play with, so I was like, all right. No
and
one's
apparently
saying no.
a closet full of costumes as well. That's the key to this story.
You see downstairs that the TESD storeroom.
It's all costumes.
It looks like something out of
it's like the fucking First Avenue Playhouse backstage.
And that's like that's how excited he gets. Like he sent me a picture of that room. And he goes, we have our own wardrobe. That's like a childlike, you know what I mean? Like it was a glee to it.
Yeah.
To see.
Like old school 1940s back, you know, like a wardrobe.
Or SNL. That's what they do at SNL. There's a room full of fucking clothing where they'll like go dress like a tiger.
We have that now. Yeah. We literally, these guys don't know it, but I literally spent thousands on costumes.
I want an accounting.
I have no idea how many costumes I've purchased.
You see a budget finally. There's a line item for costumes 6-7 figures long. It's got to be convincing. We made a movies suit for the movies pop-up joints, and I was like, I want to get a mascot suit, and so somebody sent me to the
Like a high school mascot.
I should have said that because that would have indicated cheaper. But I said it in Hollywood, and they're like, "Oh, we use these people," and it was the people who make the suits for the Masked Singer.
Oh
my God.
So, the lady gave us a price and she's like, it was, this is kind of a deal. And it was like 12 grand.
Whoa.
And I was like, it's not even, it's hard to say this, but a deal would be 10 grand. And that's not even a deal. So she got it down to 10 grand. The moment you spend 10 grand on a costume, give them an accounting. That's when you know you're in trouble. Somebody else needs to be involved in the conversation. You have known Walter the longest, Bryan Johnson.
Yeah.
Great.
1978.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Did you guys? You must have done in all your shows. You've done the Secret Origin episode of like the first conversation we had and all that shit?
We've talked about like
know.
things in 5th grade that we remember, like the wild ass picture that Walt drew for me, and Pam was like, "You can't hang around with him anymore,"
Because it was wild ass.
because it was an ass with eyeballs that were like uncoordinated,
Cross-eyed.
looking in different directions.
Years later, it would be Evil Legs. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember Evil Legs.
You've known him the longest. So you've seen Walt Flanagan through the ages, and now you're very familiar with Walt Flanagan, entrepreneur, businessman,
Right.
co-star, fucking all those things. If
It's
I'm
pretty amazing.
yes, if I'm fucking flabbergasted.
What was your perception of me? That like I was.
I thought you were a loser.
I don't understand this. Like,
No,
this
you're a very
kind of,
like reserved kind of guy, like incredibly creative, brilliant, I think,
brilliant.
but not like
I like that.
not. I do. I do
like
think that,
that.
like the
Clearly,
the
there's
shows
brilliance at work.
the shows on Patreon that you've made up, like that I love so much. When you're like, we're gonna do this thing called Frank 5 Rewind, where we look back at shows that we liked and we're just gonna fucking comment on them. And I'm like, I can talk about TV shows. Like, thanks, Walt.
That's my job.
Yeah, that's my job. And so many times I thank the ants for like making it so this is my job. But really, another person to thank would be Walt, because without him, it wouldn't be what it is. It definitely would not be.
The around these parts, there's a lot of always Walt hero worship because, as I've told Walt many times, as I said many times in the real world, I'm not, and you guys aren't sitting here and having this conversation without Walt. I'm not sitting here and having this conversation with you guys without Walt. I'm probably still working, fucking 9-to-5 jobs if I'm lucky and stuff like that. Meeting Walter Flanagan, and I don't mean this to sound arrogant by any stretch of the imagination, but follow me on this because I'll prove it out. Was something that literally dented the universe, cracked it, if you will. Like him and I meeting made such a fucking impact.
I had this effect on girls when I was in high school.
Only boys, look around you. You're surrounded by fucking sausage. That's it. It's a bunch of dudes going, he's the best. And a bunch of chicks going like, no.
I was like, where was I would have killed for this adoration like in high school.
Well, you got it from me. Not in high school, but post high school and stuff. But if I don't meet Walt, I don't meet Jay, I don't meet you. And that means Clerks doesn't really happen because you're Randall, Jay's Jay. I'm me, but like that's not enough to hang a fucking motion picture on. So I could trace like everything back to meeting Walter and trying to please Walter.
The nut that you had to crack,
Yes.
like everything was against it.
Yes.
You're not a friendly guy.
Yes. He's absolutely right about that. It was earned work.
Standoffish.
I'll say I can point to people who will say that I am a friendly guy. It
Agreed.
takes a little bit of time, though.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's tough.
Yes.
Deb?
We've been together how long? Tell him I'm a good guy.
Put the girls on.
You are very slow to warm up to people. I thought about it like in regards to is Get Him behind me? He was there at one point. There he is.
Yeah.
I thought about it in terms of Get Him today when I was hanging out. We were doing the grand opening of the Stash this weekend. That's why I'm here in town and stuff. But as I was looking at Get Him and like you were talking to Get Him at one point, I was like, oh shit, that's Get him as Kevin Smith.
That's my son.
3.0. I guess, more or less, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
my work son.
I would co-sign that as well. That's your work son.
That's the son I never had.
It is you've always had like an acolyte. And I think I might be the first because Brian's a friend.
What's that, acolyte? I've heard that
acolyte
word.
is somebody who's like, I like what he says. I'm going to follow this priest, this holy man. So to me, you were more like a shaman. To him, you were an equal and a friend. But I come in at a point in our relationship, or when our relationship begins, I'm like, oh, this fucking guy's smart. Like, it's like what he says, where it's like, I don't know if I was like, he's brilliant at that point. I would come to know you were brilliant. But like, so much of who I am and what I went on to do professionally is really predicated on like two factors. If you were like, what do you know about Kevin Smith? They're like, fucking, he likes comics and he always wear that hockey jersey. And both of those things literally came from Walt. So Mallrats, Clerks is something that inarguably changed the culture. And I could say that now with comfort. You know, back in the day, I'd be ashamed to be like, you can't say shit like that. Over 25 years later, it's definitely changed the fucking culture. Clerks doesn't exist unless I meet Walt, who then introduces me to you, who then introduces me to Jay. Walt was there when we made Clerks as well at ground zero. And this version of Walt Flanagan, the one that like it has a green screen, the one that's like, I bought all these costumes, the one that like seems like an alternate reality Walt Flanagan. I saw hints of that guy when we made Clerks. Because there was a world where, you know, day one, everybody is around to make the movie because like, this is new and fun and shit. By day three, everyone dropped out. Like people were just gone. Like, you know, they were like, Ed stopped coming by day three. Yeah. It's just fucking boring for people that aren't, I mean, I was going to say people aren't in on the action, but we had such a small group. Everyone was in on the action. But I think, you know, Ed was just kind of like, this is boring. And he moved on and shit. Walter was there every damn day. And the guy also least likely, when I went to the Vancouver Film School, Walter like wrote me and was always like more interested in like, that's, for lack of a better description, it was almost like he was going, that's creative. You're doing something creative. That's interesting. And it was never like that. That was always a part of my life that I kept separate from you. Cause I was like, I don't want to fucking tell him that I'm into making things. Cause what if he's like, don't do that. That's stupid. Cause I knew I would have stopped.
Used a different word.
Yes. Yes. Particularly back then. A word that we're not allowed to use anymore, but yes.
Back then it meant stupid as well. But it's just,
yes.
That was a question of sexuality. No.
Exactly. But there was like, when I went away, you would write. When I came home to make Clerks, you were there for the whole thing. And then also acting in it was like a real revelation where you were like, I'll do that. Because like you weren't a play kid in high school, like you weren't in the theater or anything like that. But I saw glimpses of that cat when we made Clerks. Because you were like, this is like, for lack of a better description, you were like, this is awesome. Like, I like this. Like making a movie, that's fucked up. Let's do it. And it was never like a Quinn type of enthusiasm of like, gee, this is great. Let's do this, guys. That's how I see Quinn forever.
All right with that. I'll take that.
It was more of like, this is interesting. And like watching you now grow into a maker. And I know for some reason I keep leaving out 10 years of fucking the podcast, but you know, we all do podcasts that don't require much. That don't feel like being a maker to me. And I'm not taking anything away from the audience. They're like, fuck you. If you make a podcast, you're a maker. But like making something in terms of like, you show up at this time, you wear this fucking costume, you stand in front of here, I need these lenses. If I hadn't seen that dude on the Clerks set, I would be like, you were replaced by a fucking alien.
Really?
Yes. Because even though you drew and could draw insanely well, you were never like, I could draw, so I'm just going to make a comic book. Like that was the one thing that you didn't have was
I probably didn't have ambition.
An initiative to just be like, oh, I could take it from here to here. Like you could fucking draw, but you were never like, I'm going to fucking draw the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now you literally have, like in your life, you have writ large with two fucking partners and shit, your own universe. As I'm sitting in a room that like is surrounded by tchotchkes of an adventure that has been going on for 10 fucking years that like when people come into the stash that don't know anything about Jane, Silent Bob or the movies, I'm sure they look around and they're like, well, this must be a thing to somebody, but I've never heard of this shit. You will have the exact same effect on people walking into this room who've never heard of Tell 'em Steve Davis. And be like, it's like shit.
Do you play Magic the Gathering in here?
You know what? It hints at that. It really does. When I look around the room, I can see it. But it's so weird and wonderful to see what has been built and like this, but this is the thing that captured my imagination. I was like, I'm sorry, did you say they wanted a green wall? And they were like, yeah, well, they do a lot of shooting. I'm like, well, I mean, they can't do that much shooting, can they? Like, they do a lot of green screen. And then I went and looked, and I was like, Jesus Christ, like they've become the Muppet Show. It went from a podcast where like literally I was there for the birth of this podcast. It was about like one sad dude.
Yeah.
And now it's about funny costumes.
Now look, yeah, I'm dressed up like the Golden Girls.
Zack Snyder's Justice League is now streaming on HBO Max. Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, and I can tell you that I watched all 4 hours of Zack Snyder's Justice League in one sitting, man, from Friday at 1 in the morning to Friday at 5 in the morning, and I loved it. This is a beautiful film. This is Zack Snyder's definitive director's cut of Justice League. Fans demanded it, and HBO Max heard their calls. Packed full of DC cameos and Easter eggs, but it's a new film with new footage, new visual effects, and a total running time spilling just over 4 hours, split into 6 chapters. Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa, Ray Fisher, and Ezra Miller reprised their roles. Batman, determined to ensure Superman was not sacrificed in vain, aligns forces with Diana Prince and plans to recruit a team to protect the world from an imminent threat. Each of the recruits must face the demons of their own past to transcend that which has held them back, allowing them to come together and finally form a league of heroes. Now united, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Cyborg, and The Flash may be too late to save the planet from Steppenwolf, Desaad, and Darkseid and their dreadful intentions. Oh, I love the flick, man. You're now going to be able to watch it, see it in all its glory on HBO Max. What are you waiting for? Haven't you waited long enough for the damn Snyder Cut? Come on, dig in, get some corn, get something to drink, go to the bathroom before it begins, and sit down and just luxuriate in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Zack Snyder's Justice League is now streaming on HBO Max. You are at the epicenter of the journey. The reason that it all began was to throw you a fucking life preserver, right? Something to cling to. It has long stopped since that being that, or am I wrong?
No, I would say that.
Do you still use it like therapy?
Still that. Maybe not as much as I once did because the place isn't as deep and dark. But
it's true.
But it definitely.
Let's talk about that. When you start, so you're almost 500 episodes in,
right?
You may, you'll never be, done with your pain, but you may be through like a lot of your fucking dark shit. Like, number one, you're fucking happily married. So that indicates you're through with a lot of dark shit. But that entire time of 10 years of essentially doing therapy on this podcast is probably why you're a lighter person now. Because there was a period when you were, pretty fucking dark and stuff like that. And not dark, fun dark. Because there was a period where you were always dark with a dark sense of humor. But when the sense of humor went away and the darkness remained, that's when it was sad.
What do you think of murder-suicide, Kev?
Yes. Yeah. Well, that was one of the most shock. I've talked about it before, and I tell it all the time. And I hope whenever I tell it, I'm like, Jesus, I hope that he doesn't care. Like that you're not like, shut the fuck up. But like, I tell the story of Walter reaching out and being like, you should call Brian. And that is like a phone call that I've never had from him ever. Like fucking, and we don't talk on a regular basis. So for him to call at all was kind of like, uh-oh. And I was like, why? What's up? And he's like, he doesn't sound good lately, man. And I called you and I was like, what's up, big? How are you? And you were like, well, I have one foot on the stool. And I was like, I didn't have that reaction.
Damn shit on the floor.
My reaction was just like, oh, Jesus. Like fucking you can't be that person because like I think like you're fucking a god. Like if God is fucking sad and thinking about having one foot on the stool, where does that fucking leave me? Naturally, your problems led right to mine,
Right.
where I was just like, what does this mean for me? So I said, hey man, you should do podcasts. Like they love you guys when you're on fucking podcasts. You sit around and talk and you would feel you would hear what people say about you. You'd feel valued, blah, blah, blah. So it started as like therapy for you. But now, I'm not going to say therapy's done because I guess I've never been to therapy, but that's a lifelong thing. But
Never ends.
It would seem though that like, for lack of a better description, you have unburdened yourself for a decade.
Yeah, actually, like when I was living in LA, when I was running the West Coast stash out there, I saw a psychologist weekly, and it just.
Did you really?
Oh yeah, Dana. I remember Dana.
You fucking saw Dana too?
We all saw Dana.
Let me tell you something, kids, and we're not supposed to talk about this because of therapy or whatever the fuck, the rules of it. But at one point, this Dana person was seeing Bryan Johnson, Scott Mosier, Jennifer Schwalbach, and I was like, it's got to be me.
Right.
I mean, what are they all going in there and being like, I hate him. I just don't know how to tell him. So you were seeing somebody, and I'm not saying like shit on that to raise this, but talking to one person about your shit versus talking to two people, close friends, and then the world as well. Has it been more therapeutic than the single conversation?
Absolutely.
Certainly been more profitable and more productive and fun. But
that cost me money.
Excellent point. Oh my God, you're so right. You used to pay for fucking therapy. Now people pay you to do therapy, to listen to you talk about your problems.
It's nice. I mean, not nice that people have problems that are similar to mine, but it is nice that they're like, hey, I went through the same thing. I'm going through the same thing. Like, it helped me. Like, the number of times I've heard that the podcast has helped them, I don't really care about other people that much, but it does make you feel.
I'll vouch for that. He's right.
I don't.
Very small list.
But it's nice to know that like you do have an effect, and it's like that would never happen in regular therapy. You know, I would go and I would be like, hey, you want to know what happened in therapy today? And somebody would be like, no, not really. I don't care.
Right.
Whereas like maybe not everybody cares about this particular issue that I had this week, but some people will be able to relate. And that's what I like. Just being, and that's like when we used to listen to Stern all the time prior to him becoming Hampton's Howie.
The unsung. Oh, listen to you getting judgy and shit, throwing in some fucking shade on the side. Hampton's Howie. To be fair, credit where credit's due. Part of the reason we all podcast, probably the main reason the main reason I do, and part of the reason I know you do, and I think it's probably in your DNA, but you not so much because you were never a big guy.
I never listened to any radio.
Stern is in the DNA of a lot of the things we do, particularly of the podcast stuff, because I remember listening to a dude be like, could you imagine? Like, remember the thing that we would always say to each other, the dream job that Brian and I described as like, oh my God, that would be it. Was one time Jackie Martling mentioned he made $1,000 a week. And this was like in the late 80s, early 90s. And me and him were like, could you imagine getting paid a fucking $1,000 a week to just sit around with your friends and make fun of shit? Like, oh my God, that's the dream. You're literally fucking living that dream, doing far better than Jackie Martling in the late 80s, early 90s.
Even now.
Yes, particularly even now. It is
and it was two guys who were sitting around a fucking convenience store just being like, wouldn't that be awesome? And then it turns into it.
Yeah.
But I think
that comes from, but honestly, like I could trace that back to Walter, the arrogance, the hubris of being like, you know what, I want to make a fucking movie and I think I can make an interesting movie. Like goes back to you going like, I don't give a fuck that people don't read some people think comic books are stupid. Like I tell it all the time, but you fucking literally said, you were like, why? Because I was like, yeah, but fucking a lot of people make fun of people that read comics. You're like, who? And I was like, well, I guess me is what I was saying. But you were just like, why would someone make fun of me? He's like, fucking, I read The Watchmen. They didn't. I should make fun of them. And I was like, my God, it's fucking just a simple flip like that. And the same thing got me to a place eventually of like, even though you were never like, Kev, you should go out and fucking tell stories and blah, blah, blah. It was an ethos that I didn't have that I adopted. Like many things. Like, you know, I liked comics when I was a kid and the Super Friends and stuff, but I gave it up in high school because I was like, I want to get laid. And you were the guy that was like, why would I give this up?
Girls don't like me anyway.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
I have no chance in pussy, so comics it is. But you held on to comics all throughout high school, correct? Like you kept reading and shit?
I did. Oh yeah.
Did you keep it on the down low though?
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah,
God,
definitely.
in my hero's heart of my view of you is in high school, you put your feet up on a teacher's desk and you're reading fucking Doc Savage comics and shit like that.
The few parties I went to, you remember the Friday night parties and high school parties, it was real tough to just start talking about comics, and try to impress people. It was just not happening.
But what do you mean, like Eddie Murphy? Like, well, no.
he's a good comic, don't get me wrong, but a great comic's The Watchmen. New Walt would find a way to market the Comics and Kegger Hour and make it part of the Patreon.
Murray's Beach.
Yes. Everybody, we're meeting down Murray's Beach every Friday night for this level. This members only. How many levels do you guys have?
Does that make it sound like Scientology?
Yes. When do they find out that they're fucking aliens?
If you want to buy it,
none of our ants are clear yet.
They're still going clear.
Six levels? 5 or
1,
6?
2, 3, 4. I think there's 6. Yeah, 6 tiers.
Quinky, you're for those who came in late, of course, Brian Quinn here is super fucking famous for Walter mentioned it before by hip initials, but Impractical Jokers, IJ, he said. He was like IJ, and I was like, that's fucking, you could tell you must talk about that on Tell 'em Steve Dave. Nobody wants to say Impractical Jokers anymore. It's just become IJ.
It was Jokers. Now it's just IJ.
This, for me, your role in Tell 'em Steve Dave was always like, oh, Brian gets to be me. Like if I was here,
Yeah.
I would have fucking, for sure, fucking sat in on this show.
Yeah. I think that's accurate.
But you are the essential third, because if one steps back from the show and looks at it, it's kind of like a marriage counselor who's been working for 10 years to keep married people together. Do you see your role thusly?
Yeah, I always saw myself as kind of like a pivot point that could argue whatever both their stances, like just kind of here in the middle and stuff like that. And reacting or just trying to rein it in here and there. I actively try to never drive the conversation on Tell 'em Steve Dave, which is fun because these two are just so great at it.
What's the difference between this job and the other job?
Well,
yeah, other than the filthy lucre, that true money.
The other job, there's never a time I don't want to do TSD. I always love coming down, always have fun. The other one, at times, there's been entire seasons where it's been a job as opposed to me fucking around with my friends. This is always me fucking around with my friends.
Which is weird because that, too, is also you fucking around with your friends.
I know. Yeah,
you may be the luckiest person in the world because your two jobs are literally like, oh, I have to go work with my fucking friends again.
And before that, I worked in a firehouse, which was just a frat house. It's like I've just been coasting along on like this great
chummiest
vibe.
Employee ever.
Hey man, I'm here to have fun, guys.
What's the most surprising thing to you about the fact that you guys been doing this a decade?
Actually, that it's not surprising at all. I don't think this will stop till one of us is dead. I think one of us dies, then we do a big wrap-up funeral episode, and then that's it.
Probably with a green screen and special effects.
A
lot of smoke, floating heads, dead body reanimated. You should really put that in writing now. You guys should put together like a TESD pact where whoever dies, you agree to have your corpse animated in a future video.
Originally, the idea was Walt wanted to, we just all assumed I would die first. This was in the throes of my drug
Fair
addiction.
enough. Yeah, I would have put money on that.
And he wanted to stuff me and put me in the stash with like a highlight reel running on a TV screen.
That'd be brilliant. That'd be fantastic. Mummify you. It'd be like when he went to like Ripley's Believe It or Not. Right. You're like, is that a real body? You're like, oh yeah. That's a former podcast.
So shut.
And the beard is still growing.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be awesome.
Brian, you also like in the midst. TESD came before Impractical Jokers.
Oh, yeah,
I can't. IJ
3 years, like 3 years before it.
But Impractical Jokers bought a brewery.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I started a beer company. I didn't buy I don't own the brewery. Like I can't give tours and stuff.
Is that right? So you don't know the building?
It's
and
like
shit?
a gypsy.
In my
tour.
head, you were like Bart Simpson when he
No.
bought that building and
Yeah,
shit. I'm
no.
like, he has an
Nothing
entire
cool.
factory.
No, because you.
So
could,
wait, explain.
you
What
could
is it?
rent? You could like go to breweries and be like, "Hey, man, I got to just rent your tank."
It's like a ghost kitchen where you can
Exactly.
like
It's
run
like a
food
gypsy
out of
kitchen,
somebody
right.
else's kitchen.
So it's like you could either, because to start a brewery is like $2 million,
right.
and whereas to just rent it is just the cost of a brew and a little more.
So when did you get the idea to take over? Because it is an existing brand or no?
No, it was a brand on R&H beer. It was a brand on Staten Island from 1886 to 1950, and I had never heard about it. And then as I get older, I started getting more interested in Staten Island history, and I started doing research, and I started looking into stuff, and I was like, holy shit, this brewery was unbelievably successful. It was like a top shelf, and then it just got forgotten, and I was like, well, that doesn't seem right. So I bought the trademark and hired a brewer.
Brewmeister?
Yeah. This woman named Amanda. She's fucking unbelievable. Like she takes like she sits down and she's like, well, what type of beer do you like? And I describe it to her, and then she comes back with like 5 or 6 different test batches. And then I have the Firehouse guys come over and they drink it with me, and we give notes, and it's like just a blast. It's a blast. It's like I just wanted to do something that was just fun, like you know what I mean? Like let's just do this for fun. So,
But the difference between you and me is when I want to do something for fun, I'm like, let's put my face all over it and my friends.
yeah,
You wouldn't know if I tripped into your fucking beer.
yeah.
It's not like Brian Quinn brand beer.
No, I'm
Impractical beer.
Yeah, I'm
Tell
actually
him, beer Dave. Like there's no angle, no hook. What's that all about?
That's me being a bad marketer.
I was gonna say,
yeah.
more comfortable. Like for me, my read on it was like, this cat's so fucking cool. He don't have to stoop to like buy my shit. Like
no, I
he's
should
like,
stoop.
yeah,
Yeah,
well,
I
smart money
should-
stoops.
Yeah, I'm not stooping enough. I got to stoop a little bit more. But it would have been like,
stupid.
yeah, it's very stupid. I have to like when for the 4 months we had before the pandemic shut us down, I was going to bars, and I was going in bars and like buying the whole bar of beer.
I saw
and
on
stuff, like,
social
fun
media
shit
you were
like
being
that.
a very
I was
active. Yeah, you were stooping it hard.
But there was something about the pandemic, and we weren't really, I don't know. It just felt like a weird time to be like, hey guys, order my beer. You know what I mean? I don't know. It just,
Here's COVID.
yeah, I don't know.
There you go. There's an angle.
Yeah, I wasn't in the mood for it and stuff like that. So we, I do a radio show every week for it, and I do minimal, but I really got to do more. I'm Kara's
Time
always
to
yelling
lean
at me.
into it, man. Fucking like, didn't Clooney make $1 billion selling booze?
Yeah, that's actually what Kara, the woman who runs the company, she was like,
Clooney, this shit,
she's
you
like,
idiot.
what the fuck? Because we ordered the beer truck, and I was like, nah, just put the logo on the side. And she's like, just put you on the truck. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. And she's like, Clooney, if a truck drives by, it's his face drinking a tequila. She's like, do it. And I didn't do it.
Do it.
I didn't do it. I got to do it. But I don't know.
Brewmeister told you to do this?
Yeah, no,
Why won't
this
you
is
listen to the
this-
Brewmeister? Oh.
The COO of the company, Kara.
So wait a second. Who owns the company?
I own the company.
And what's a COO? COO.
I don't know. It's just a title she wanted, I think. So I just gave, whatever. She runs the company. Kara basically runs the company for me.
Right on. So so all the administrative shit.
Yeah.
You're all the fun. She's all the like,
Bingo.
here's how you fucking
That's it.
make this work.
Yeah, she's been working in breweries for decades. Not decades. She's not that old, but for a long time. And
Somewhere she's
I'm sorry,
listening going,
Kara.
fuck you.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm glad you weren't on the side of the truck.
So she's that was it exactly. I was like, if you could do the fun, I'll do the fun stuff. You do everything else, and she's got a mind for it. So I just let her make all the decisions.
Did you meet her in a bar or something like that?
No, I've known her since she was 7. She was just my friend's little sister.
You met at 7 in a bar?
Yeah, we were. Yeah, so I don't know. She's just always impressed me as a type A.
Is she a beer drinker? Does one need to be a beer liker or aficionado to be involved in the beer
The
business?
2 ladies that run my company certainly enjoy beer. They drink it a lot. Yeah,
Every time I've seen her, yeah, it seems like she likes beer.
they like drinking a lot of beer. Yeah, but it's good. It's
The
good,
drunk
really good beer.
COO.
Fucking jerk won't put his face on a truck.
Yeah.
Pussy.
Put it on the side of a fucking building, but not our truck.
Yeah.
Right outside the SModco offices in California and Los Angeles, giant fucking impractical jokers fucking side of a building.
Oh yeah, I apologize to.
Every day we're like, no, it's very. I'm rarely in the office, but Jordan says like every day I see that and it makes me so fucking happy. She's like, I can't believe I know that person.
She's the best.
She's a wonderful.
She's just
person.
great. Yeah.
Isn't it weird though? Like you look at Q and you think of such humble beginnings.
Yes.
And like,
well, I think
I'm
it's such
proud of-
hostile
I'm proud
beginnings.
of the guy.
Hostile beginnings.
Yeah.
Where he walks into a bookstore and fucking tells off a poor clerk to impress the guy who made Clerks. Mark the irony.
That's vision.
Right.
That is.
That's vision. I'm telling you.
Got him hired. That's for sure. I was like, I need that young man. I need that kind of moxie.
Yeah, it is. It's funny how Red Bank just over the years become like this. This used to be a health. I used to get shots for wheatgrass shots.
Yeah,
for Scott
here.
and Monica right here. So it's
Oh
like
my
fun
God.
to be in here. You know what I mean?
Right, that's
I
right.
have all these weird memories of Red Bank. This is one of them.
Scott and Monica were wheatgrassers.
Oh, they went through like 2 summers where that was it. That's all they wanted. $1 a shot.
The what is the most fun thing that you guys think you've done with TESD in the entire 10 years? But it sounds like most of the really fun stuff has been happening in the last 3 to 5.
I found this stuff when we went to the auction, like when we go to the flea market.
So like
we've
making
done-
hay?
Yeah,
Like
well,
fucking episode 3?
Well, we did it 3 times.
You've gone
We
back
really
to
milked
the.
that.
We've gone back, 2 more times after
We
that.
might
Just
have
out
to
of
go back.
curiosity,
Yeah.
why?
If everybody else likes making hay the best, why can't I?
But just out of curiosity, why only 3 times? Why not, in 10 years? How come it's not like we went back once a year for the making hay episode?
I think it was just like it was special
just-
occasions, right? And
I
it's just there's
think
not
it would
enough
lose,
new people.
It would lose its charm, you know.
Look at you, and that's called curating. Like rather than just going like we're gonna fucking fuck all of these sheep, you're like we're gonna walk down, we're gonna fuck one of those sheep, we're gonna walk down the hill, fuck all of these sheep. That old adage fell apart in my mouth. It sounds way dirtier than I meant it. What about you?
Man, I really like the game show stuff that we do. I could pick like Flanagan son was that Elephants in the Room.
Oh
Like-
yeah,
Like I like all the game show stuff because the roast was really
roast was good.
a good one because everybody was fucking vicious, man. Everybody went for everybody's throats. It was hysterical. It was so funny.
Yeah, we put it out in 2016. We probably could not put it out in 2021.
No,
Yeah, it was like a roast back in the day on the one we watched on
Like
TV.
a Dean Martin
Yeah.
roast.
Yeah.
I see. But wait a second, who was that done for?
Q.
That was my
We
40th
roasted Q.
birthday. Yeah.
But it was for the Patreon audience.
No,
No.
it was Patreon wasn't around then. We put it out on vinyl. It's on the bottom down there.
That's one of the records you
It's one of
did.
the records. we
Which
did, yeah.
record was it?
It was the
First or
double
second?
disc second.
The one with the cartoon, like the
Yeah,
John
Get
K
'em
looking
is-
art.
Yeah.
I remember I got the first album. I think you sent me a copy or something like that. And I put up a picture like on Twitter or something like that. And I instantly got berated by a few ants who were like, "You piece of shit, I didn't even see it yet. You fucking spoiled it." And I was like, I guess that's how they grow their fans over there. Thought I was helping, my bad. How many records have you made? 2?
2.
2.5 because we also released a little mini 45 of
Oh.
Sunday Jeff rap.
Oh
You
no,
did a
Christmas
45?
too.
Christmas one, yeah.
What Christmas one?
Oh no.
With
I have
Sal
Sal and
and,
Sunday Jeff singing.
Sal and Sunday Jeff singing.
Oh,
We
the
didn't put-
fan
we-
made that.
the fan made that. Yeah.
That's
Official
it.
releases. We
There's a bootleg.
Yeah, like, there's bootlegs out there.
It's like fish bootleg. There was somebody today here at the grand opening. We were letting people who came for the grand opening sign the fake steel shutters on the fake Quick Stop in the back of the store, and a lot of the cats coming in were putting up their numbers and going like asking like, "What's my number? Do you remember?" "Oh, I remember my number." And so I turned to Walt and I was like, "They're all putting up their fucking TESD numbers." And Walt goes like, "What's that?" And I was like, "What do you mean?"
No, I didn't. I had not seen somebody with
That's right,
a
it was a
card.
card. That's
It was a
right. My
card.
bad. He
I
didn't
knew
know
what the
what it was.
numbers were.
I was like, they had a card, and he's like, "I don't know what that is and stuff." But wait, what you know what the numbers are?
I know what the numbers were. Yeah, people who joined up got a number to the motorcycle club.
Demons.
Yeah. But I didn't realize that there was a card that they could print out.
Off the
Yeah,
website.
I didn't realize that. I'd forgotten about that.
What when they
Yeah.
and this was pre-Patreon?
Yeah.
What were they joining?
This was cute. I mean, cute. Like
A covert mailing list.
Is that what it was? So it sounds like we're collecting data.
I was watching what was the Sons of Anarchy and getting into the whole motorcycle culture, and I was like, wow, we should start like a comic book themed motorcycle gang club. And so we were just like, fuck it, but anybody could join. Where like the rule was anybody had to do was see a motorcycle in their life and they could join, and it took off though. It took like Midwest housewives show up like in Practical Joker shows, but like the vests and the stuff like that, and a patch on the back. And I took the patch to me and you. Remember we met that Hell's Angel guy in Manhattan, and I showed him the patch, and the Hell's Angel essentially gave us permission to do it because we were like,
Did you need the permission?
Oh yeah,
That looks
fucking-
awfully
close.
Wait, what?
They could kill you, and not if you were seen rocking
you-
that rocker.
if you're in the wrong
Wait.
territory,
Yeah, this is this is real deep shit.
if you don't
You might
get
want to talk about this.
Yeah. can we use code names?
like if you're in the territory of a motorcycle club and you don't basically just pay that courtesy respect, then you can get stopped.
What courtesy and respect?
I'm just being
Removing your.
Well, we had to
crest?
take the rocker. It couldn't say anything on the
I couldn't
bottom.
say anything. The rocker can't have.
What is a rocker? I'm sorry. I'm working at a.
Sure, it's the patch, and then it says like New York under the bottom.
That's called the rocker.
Rocker
The
patch.
arc. The upside down arc.
Right.
And
Smile.
what did you? And so that is owned by the Hell's Angels.
No, that's a motorcycle club thing. You got to earn that. You got to probably kill somebody to get that rocker.
Well,
Back in the day, I don't know if they still got to kill people.
These
Right?
fucking ants.
they haven't changed a lot.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got off easy when they
I
just
know.
yelled at you about spoiling the vinyl.
It's true. Who knew? I could get my fucking throat slashed for less.
Well, there was it happened in Staten Island actually. Somebody had a Sons of Anarchy cut on, and somebody made them take that off. So you don't know like how.
Yeah.
So somebody like in some fictional world or some hyperbolic world or a hypothetical world.
Yeah.
You could be wearing a 4-color demons patch.
No.
No?
If you put New York, the thing is, if you put the name of a town underneath it, then you're claiming territory. And if you're on someone's
Had you guys
territory,
done that?
no, that's what I asked him about. I asked him to look at it. He was like, take that off.
And
So
you'll
there
be
was a
fine.
rocker, and what did the rocker say?
It was just going to be whatever town you were in. So, it was
but
gonna
so you hadn't designed it yet.
no, because it was just going to be in the,
Meaning-
London, Staten Island, just
So
whatever.
meaning like would everyone get their own?
Sure,
town?
yeah, you would make whatever town you lived in if you could just get it made up, and that was going to be your town
But
But that would get someone killed if
Yeah.
they
because they're
wore
claiming
that.
territory. Yeah,
They would.
Could
at
you
least
imagine
take
getting
it away.
killed for a fictional fucking biker gang predicated on comic books?
could you imagine the jump in our numbers?
One sacrificial lamb.
There's only one way to stay safe. You're joining. But wait, that was for
Yeah.
the 4-color demons.
yeah, that was 4-color demons.
So, and people signed up, and what did they didn't buy something. They just
no, we
joined.
we just
They got a
wanted
free
it
card.
to be a communal like thing. We weren't looking, we made the patches, so we were looking to make money. But it's grown up to a place. I mean, it's a lot like your fans, but to a much lesser degree. Like they'll have rallies where they'll meet at bars and drink and stuff like that. And it's that thing where people are like, we wouldn't know each other if it wasn't for this, and we become friends. And this is like,
That I've
we
heard.
got married. because
That's
of
a
the 4-color
sentiment I'm
demon.
very familiar with. The
Yeah.
idea of like people. I met a bunch of people today who say the same thing. I've been hearing that shit for decades. I am inured to it, not in a way where I'm like, I could care less about your personal story. It still touches me, but I've heard it so much in my life
Yeah.
that before the words come out, I could be like, here it comes. And what is it like for you guys? What is it like for you? What is it like to see somebody fucking quiver
Get
and
married?
cry or fucking like be like,
Oh, I hate that.
I'm certainly not like, don't you love it? Isn't it great? Don't you like when they cower
I
and
like
whimper?
when they come up to me and they don't act that way, and there's no kind of like weird awkwardness, and except on my part. Like I'm
You're like,
okay, I'm okay
you're
if
like,
I'm awkward with them,
an awkward-
but if I feel like I can feel that awkwardness, yeah, it's really just like it gives me anxiety,
What if they don't have like convulsions or something like that, but
and they're just cool.
but they hit you with, they go deep hard where they're like, no fucking lubricant anal. They're just like, I almost tried to kill myself and your voice is the voice that stopped me. Do you get that?
I've gotten that. I've gotten more emails like that, and I've actually
Deleted them.
connect. No.
Oh wait, did they shoot something to me years ago?
But I've gotten emails, and I've kept up correspondence with a couple people who have said
Who broke into your iron heart?
who sent the email, and I responded, and then they'll come back a couple months later and say things are better now, and they'll mention something like on the pod that can start a branch off to a conversation that's not so heavy,
Right.
as like something like they're dealing with such problems. And so there's quite a few people though that I've kept up with. I never even met them. I don't know what they look like, but that's pretty neat.
One day they're like writing you like, I feel brave enough to come into the store, and it's fucking Drake. Somebody like super fucking famous. I picked the wrong name. It's, my bad.
Like a duck?
It's Tom Brady.
Okay, yeah.
What about you?
What about me? Like when I hear that kind of stuff.
Yes. Have you had the moments where
Oh, yeah.
somebody's like been like, you saved my life and here's why?
Definitely more in person than on email, like Walt, because I go to conventions or did go to conventions.
You've seen people in the real world and shit.
And people, yeah, the two most
And also,
common.
to be fair, for the record, for those that don't follow that closely, when it comes to live performance, Brian has Walter beat by a country mile because Walter hates live performance. Yet Brian will still go out and do live performance outside of TESD with things like Space Monkeys with Q,
Right.
The E show you do with E on Sirius or whatever.
Yeah, Compound, yeah.
So you interact with the public in a different way, with the public that is coming specifically to see you, whereas Walter, for years, because of the store, has interacted with the public, some of whom are coming to see him, but not all. But the people who come to see you in a public setting, they're like, oh, I'm there because he said something funny. This guy particularly, or that guy said something funny, and I'm there for and stuff. So that means it's a long way of saying you encounter more people who would like tell you that in person versus like the emails that he gets and stuff.
Yeah, I get that.
He's like the man in the high castle. They're like, how do we reach him? Like, just send him an email.
Well, Walt always says, and I tend to agree that people are like, hey man, I was going to take my life, but it was not for you guys. You know, that would have happened. And Walt's like, you know, they would have found something. They may have found something else.
I disagree. And it's probably my like wishful thinking and hubris because I've heard it so many times that I'm like, I did save that person's life. I'm good. Like mom said I was. But I do feel that's true. Like, you know, I mean, think about it. I've never been the very suicidal person in my life, but anytime I've ever been fucking like deeply blue or something like that, whatever's pulled me out of it has become something to me that's like, well, I mean, look, I went through a midlife crisis. That's why I like fucking clung to Gretzky out of nowhere. I didn't fucking.
That's why?
Yes. That was when I had a midlife crisis. I was like, oh my God, it came right after fucking Zach and Miri Make a Porno and Cop Out. So it was back to back fucking hits where I was like, and that was the moment where I was like, oh, I'm A, no longer the golden boy, B, no longer a boy, C, no longer fucking golden. And a lot of people think I'm a fucking joke and shit. So there was a tough transition period there where I was like, I can't be that guy anymore because I'm not the new kid because now I'm fucking established and they've seen all my tricks and now they don't fucking like my tricks. Like used to be, I was like, hey man, fucking Mallrats. And you know, the critics be like, fuck you. But eventually the audience came around. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is not an insanely well thought out movie. In fact, having just read the first draft of it recently, you know, it's a miracle that fucking movie got made at all. But generally speaking, like, yeah, by the time I got to Zach and Miri and Cop Out, those were the two. Zach and Miri probably even more so than Cop Out. Bruce Willis just destroyed my spirit on Cop Out, and that was a different kind of midlife crisis. One where I was like, do I even want to work in this business anymore? Like, he's the top of the mountain. And if this is what the top of the mountain is, like, I'd rather jump off the mountain. I'd rather fucking work with Jason Mewes. That's fun. This guy's a fucking, you know, soulless fucking animal. Sorry, that's probably maybe a little too intense to say. But he just really dishonored the fucking. He's the first person I ever worked with that didn't want to be there, and I'm like,
even that far back, huh?
It's crazy,
yeah,
crazy. And still, and you know, it's years later, and I'm certainly over it. I'm not like I hate him. Still, like I reached out to him for Jay and Silent Bob reboot. He passed, of course, but still, I was like, hey, come play and shit. He was like, fuck you. But that one broke my like interest in the business. Like I kind of walked away after that. Like we made Red State and I was like, I ain't doing this anymore. And that was the lingering effects of Bruce. So that was part of the midlife crisis. But Zach and Miri Make a Porno was like, that was the one that was supposed to be huge. Like, oh, this movie's going to make $100 million and that's going to change everything. And it wouldn't have changed anything. I would have kept making the same fucking movies I chose and stuff. But that one falling apart and fucking, I made $30 million. It made Kevin Smith money. And it was just like, that's it. Like after all that work, we had the guy from Knocked Up. That fucking cracked me and shit. So there have definitely been times, and Gretzky came into that,
well, yeah,
oddly enough, into that
like,
void.
People usually buy a sports car.
Yeah.
Toupee or something.
Yeah.
Toupee.
Yeah. Well, I've got the hat, so I don't need the toupee.
I mean, that's the trope.
I agree completely.
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying like anybody needs
you looked at him and me, and you came up with both of those.
No, because he said it back to me. He parroted it. That's why I looked at him. But like, yeah, why? Because I mean, I don't think I'm going through a midlife crisis. I think I love Tom Brady more than you love Gretzky.
Probably. Why? Well, here's the question.
Trust
Why?
me.
Well, here's the thing. Is there anything you could find out about Tom Brady that would change the way you feel about him?
Well, I mean, there's been some nasty news that have come out. You know, he went for a PPP loan, and you know,
But that's not enough to make a true fan like yourself be like,
You got tipsy after the Super Bowl.
that might be that might. Walt's got a bias against that, so that I could see that being the line that he crossed.
but you know, that's kind of nasty though. That like, why
The
would a
PPP
guy?
thing?
Yeah, why would a guy need to apply for?
I
a
mean,
loan
believe
to
me,
buy
I
a
ain't,
yacht?
I ain't defending him, but like, you know, what are the chances he was the guy filling out the
That's what I was
paperwork?
going to say. It was probably somebody on his
It was
behalf.
probably his Kara or COO
Oh no, I
or
filled
whatever.
out the paperwork for mine.
Did you? Yeah, you're like, I want that. It was free money. I need that yacht money.
Yeah, that was me.
I want to go sailing. Don't you understand? There's
So-
no COVID at sea.
But
40
like,
grand, man.
but like I said though, like the common things that people having a midlife crisis
Mm.
would not be a retired athlete, because although it you know, it
Yes,
doesn't,
you're
it doesn't
absolutely
make any
right.
sense.
This is, I think, because I've done a lot of analysis, personal now, not like sitting down with a therapist, but a lot of like, why did I go so hard on somebody that like isn't even in my line of work? Like, it's not like all of a sudden I was like, Scorsese, don't you get it? He's a fucking god of a filmmaker. It was, I don't even play hockey. And still, like, I was drawn to that story. And I think, and this is going to sound weird and I don't want it to sound arrogant, but it's because of the similarities to my own life. I'm not the greatest at anything. I've never hoisted fucking that many Stanley Cups. But you're talking about a dude who came from nowhere, whose parents were very fucking sweet to him and kind of encouraging, and very encouraging in his case, who went on the ride of a fucking lifetime, but he went way earlier. So it started for him when he was like literally 10 years old. You can listen to that dude doing interviews as a 10-year-old kid, and he's already got like an angle. Like he's prepossessed. He knows how to handle himself in front of a fucking microphone. So because he was retired, when I got into him, I could look at the entire career. There's no like, because the numbers meant nothing to me. Like, you know me, as much as I like hockey, it's not like I
Stats,
go
you
all
mean?
the time. The stats. What captured my imagination, and I think what has always eluded me as regards sports, like why I've never had a real interest in sports, but why I do gravitate toward hockey at all, other than like fucking you introduced me to it, is there's always a story in hockey, and it's always a better story than most of the other stories. Like in order to sell the game, which is a concept that, you know, it's a cogent concept that they actually speak about in NHL, in hockey in general, sell the game. Because it's not like baseball, it's not like basketball, it's not football. It doesn't pre-sell itself. Their audiences for hockey are much smaller. So there's a bit of salesmanship involved as well. So not only are you like, I do a thing, but I've got to tell you how it's the best thing in the world you could watch. Like, oh my God, have you ever seen people skate? It's such a fast game and stuff like that. That appeals or matches up with me, in as much as like I make a thing and I'm also responsible for fucking selling the thing. And Gretzky did that his entire career. Other than be like fantastic at what he does and stuff, he sold the game. So like the way of life of the thing that he leaned into was equally as important to him, not just like fucking stardom. The other thing that I really identified with him about was, if you read Gretzky's stories in childhood and adulthood, Edmonton stories, King stories, whatever the fuck. Marc Messier put it best. I think he said, all you had to do was show up and do your job and magical things would fucking happen. So Gretzky was the kind of guy that could easily make the shot himself. But instead, he would just shoot it to you so you could make the fucking shot. And I think that's what I dialed in on the most. This was a guy who was, and again, I'm not saying I'm the greatest, just like him, but this was a guy who was exceptional at doing a thing. And rather than show off time and time again, which one could argue he did, because he holds the fucking like highest record, not only in the NHL, but across all sports, his stats can't be touched by any other fucking athlete, even Tom Brady. Not even Tom Brady.
We might have
In your heart, perhaps.
Gretzky doesn't have 7 rings.
That's true. That's true. But the fact that he would pass and let teammates score is something that, like, you know, I was like, that's me. There's a scene in a God, what is it called? It's an old Miramax movie, and Christian Bale's in it, and it's Glam something. Fuck, I forget the name of it. But it's about the rise of glam music and shit like that. It was, I forgot, the name escapes me. But Christian Bale plays a guy, and at one point there's a scene where he's watching like David Bowie as Ziggy Stardust or a David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust-like character on TV. And he's with his parents. And he's watching it with like silent awe. And then they cut to his internal reaction, like what he really wants to fucking say. And he turns around to his parents. He's like, that's me. That is me. Like he identifies with this fucking person. That's what I felt like about Gretzky. It wasn't the excellence or being exceptional at something or incredibly gifted. It was the other things, the adjuncts, the guy who was humble enough to keep selling the fucking game, even though he really didn't have to. The guy who was like, where's your stick? Just put it down. Bam. And fucking hit it off your stick. So you got the fucking point. He gets the fucking assist. Mm-hmm. That shit really appealed to me. And the fact that you can step back and look at his entire life work, because it was done, because he retired and it had a neat bow on it. The only problem was he retired with fucking the Rangers, but whatever. But like, you can look at the entire thing like a story, as opposed to like, you know, oh, I watched this game. Like, you know, how many Gretzky games have I ever watched in my life? Not many, because I didn't see them ever live. And it wasn't a big enough fan to go back and actually watch gameplay. I watched a lot of highlight stuff and whatnot. So, but yours is different.
Yeah, mine's
because he's active. And
well, mine, I started out as I was trolling the listeners of our podcast.
Were you really?
Yeah, because everybody hates him. So I was like, initially, I was just like,
people don't like this guy. I thought he's like the most beloved fucking quarterback of all time or whatever.
Oh, no, people can't stand him because he is the most
because he wins
the greatest of all time.
So for the same way people hated Gretzky because he's great, but not because he's an asshole.
I don't know if anybody's ever hated Gretzky. Like, I mean, he seems like that aw shucks kind of like, you know, like country kid who, you know, represented his country, won the gold medals for them, yada yada. But there are people who just despise Tom Brady because he's fucking a model. He's got model looks. He's got a model wife.
Here we go.
Initially, I was just being a troll. I was just being like, oh, I love Tom Brady. I love Tom Brady. And then as I started to watch, I was just like, he won me over. I was just like, holy shit. You know, there's
but what do you mean watch? Like you were watching football?
Yeah, just like watching it.
But you'd seen him for years, but suddenly through this filter, you're like...
Yeah, because like his second act is more impressive than his first act.
What is that? He had a good beginning to his career,
beginning, and then he kind of like... Yeah, then he kind of like, he went through a stretch where he wasn't winning Super Bowls. And then he goes through the second act where everybody is like ready to like write him off and like say he was all, you know, it was all somebody else's doing. It wasn't his doing that for the reasons that, you know, that team won. And he was just like, you know, he just turns to the cameras like, you know, fuck you. And, you know, suck my dick because I'm going to go to a different team and I'm going to bring them to a Super Bowl championship, a team that was like the lowest winning percentage in any professional sport.
And that was the
Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Goes there, doesn't have a training camp. Tells the organization, let me pick the players and I'll win a Super Bowl, and then does it.
It's like a Babe Ruth pointing to the field and just hitting it there. But even more impressive.
The Babes just got to be like, you know, just got to go sit down because there's
Babe Ruth got to go take a seat.
Yeah, there is no other athlete that can make the claims of what this guy has done.
Right.
I mean, he's climbed Mount Everest, and if he could climb to the moon, he would. I mean, the guy should run for president after he's done playing football.
Such great conversation. We're going to put a pin in it right here. If you want to continue listening, you're going to head over to Tell 'em Steve Dave. So that's SModcast for this week. But this conversation is to be continued over on Tell 'em Steve Dave. Or you can go watch. If you're watching this on my YouTube channel, you can watch the next hour of this at the Patreon, which again is
patreon.com/Tell 'em Steve Dave.
That's SModcast for this week. I'm Kevin Smith.
Bryan Johnson.
Brian Quinn.
Walt Flanagan.
Have a week.